the people that are here at our panel surrounding Paweł Pawlikowski. I'll try to limit the references to a few titles, or else it will extend the duration of this press conference. So you have August Diehl, that we have, of course, seen recently as Joseph Mengele in The Disappearance of Joseph Mengele, but before that, of course, Terrence Malick's A Hidden Life. You have Sandra Hüller, whom we, of course... who is, of course, also a great actress on the stage in her country, but we have discovered her in Tony Erdmann in Cannes, and then, of course, the same year, Anatomie d'une chute and The Zone of Interest. Hans Zischer. I've looked up your amazing filmography since The Kings of the Road, in Love That Sight, that we discovered some 50 years ago. More than 270 roles for film or television. And then next to me, Lucas Jal, the director of photography, who has started his career thanks to Paweł Pawlikowski. And Paweł, of course, we know you. We've known you first as a British director, especially with your first film here, The Director's Fortnight, which was The Stringer, right? But your most recent films were Polish and all in competition in Cannes. I want to ask you a first question before the room. Your last film was Cold War, which won the Best Direction here in Cannes. 8 years have passed since then. Why 8 years? Was it the hardship of finding the proper subject?
It's always hard to find a subject that you really want to spend 3 years of your life with. But there was also the problem of the pandemic, where everything stopped. Then I had a project which I was developing for 3 years, which collapsed 2 weeks before the filming started. It was called The Island, because of the actors' strike in the States. So then I found myself with and I take a long time to get going with films, because I kind of put them together very slowly. So this Thomas Mann thing came because I was sent a biography of Thomas Mann, written by Colm Toybin. The company 9 Hours asked me whether I could do a film of it, and I said, God forbid, it's a biography, I don't want to do biopics or anything like that. But then, having thought about it, I thought there was like one interesting moment in the story. I'm already jumping ahead to the genesis of our film, by the way. There was one moment, Thomas Mann's return to Germany in 1949, which seemed like a good context for a film, especially given the family things that happened in the Mann family, the love triangle with Klaus, Erika, and Thomas, and it kind of coincided with this amazing moment in history. So I thought, okay, maybe that could be an interesting film. Not a kind of historical reconstruction, but if we kind of abstract everything away and focus on the three characters and the moment, and reduce what was like a complicated long journey. I mean, Thomas Mann was in Stockholm, then he went to Frankfurt, then he went to Munich, Stuttgart, Nuremberg, and so on. But if we kind of reduced it to like simplicity of a road movie, a little bit like in Ida, it's like 5 days on the road, that would give us a chance to make something condensed, cinematic, not kind of retelling stuff that really happened, but to something that kind of has its kind of inner power. And it's a family story in an incredible historical context as well, which is always something that I like doing, telling history through people, through relationships. So once we decided to kind of focus on like these 5 days and change the personnel, so the actual journey happened with Katja, the wife of Thomas Mann, who wasn't dramatically so interesting, so we kind of dismissed her and brought in Erika, who was very interesting. And then Klaus's death actually happened like 3 months before. But it was true that Thomas Mann and Erika didn't go to the funeral, so that was true. And then into this pot, I also threw in Gründgens, Wagner, and Becher, just to have like a bunch of interesting dramatis personae. And then once you throw things in and start eliminating, adding, eliminating, condensing, you end up with something that's very rich on the kind of human level, on historical level, but something that can be told very simply. And that was the genesis of this project. And it actually only took like 1.5 years to happen. It was like the quickest probably thing that I ever developed. So I already preempted the next question was how did you come across the idea? So we can move on to the next.
Before we move on to the next question, I want to introduce some people that are very important for the film and that are here on the first row. So there's Ewa Pucinska. She has been Paweł Pawlikowski's faithful producer, of course. Mario Giannani, producer. Lorenzo Nieli, producer. Jean Fremsal, producer. Dimitri Rassam, producer. Lorenzo Gangarosa, producer. Of course, the co-screenwriter Henk-Hand Leukten. And Piotr Wójcik, editor, chief editor. Alexandra Stachko, costume designer. Katarzyna Sobanska, production designer. And Marcel Slavinsky, also production designer. Bravo. So, first question.
Suleiman Abdullah, from Berlin. You already killed my question. Also, I was trying to ask you about dismissing Katja in the films. So I would instead asking Sandra Hüller about your process or finding your way to the character in period film. You have Rosa in Berlin and here another period films. How did you work on finding your way to the somehow a character that's out of our time, meaning from 75 years ago? How did you work on that meaning? You do research yourself, speaking with people who are very close to the family? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I don't know anybody close to the Mann family. I am lucky enough to have worked with Hans Zischler, who is a very generous source of information on request. And so whenever there was a question about any sort of a relationship question between the two, I could generally ask him. I didn't know so much about Erika Mann, but the fact that she was writing and acting and racing, those were the things that were very important to me, the many languages she spoke, that she really was a citizen of the world, and she was very much in a deep connection to her brother, that she was capable of love, and that she decided to leave everything she did behind after the death of her brother in order to be with her father and to help him fulfill his, chosen duty in life. that was enough for me to work on her. And all the other things we found together. This is a true collaboration, and I like that. That we have negotiated a lot of things on set. That strong frame of Łukasz and Paweł have helped us to be in this very focused way of acting, because this frame requires a certain space that you have to be in, and in that space you find a little bit of freedom, and we tried to do that. And yeah, that's it. I had a wonderful week and beautiful costumes. Thank you. That's it.
I would just to interfere before the next questions. Can the other actors answer the same question regarding existing people and the research and the work with Paweł Pawlikowski, August? You have one scene virtually, but a very important one, the opening scene.
Yeah, I don't know. It's always, we have a responsibility when we play characters that actually really existed in the real world. But at the same time, I start to be close to Klaus Mann, or to read his books and stuff at the beginning. But then it's also a very fast process to go away from this, because we're not doing a documentary or not even a biopic. Actually, it is. It has very much to do also with myself, with Sandra, with Hans. It's a mixture between all this. Of course, you have to know something about Klaus Mann or any real character you're playing. But I think as an actor, also in general, also as a spectator, when I watch a movie, I'm not very much interested in an imitation of a real thing, but more in acting. And acting is something different. So I trusted Paweł. We were talking a lot about the opening scene, especially about the words, what he's saying, the rhythm of the scene. And then we just tried to find out, actually. I appreciate very much that I was actually invited into a search, much more than I want to have it like this and that. It was a dialogue, and that's also how I liked it the most, actually, to work like this.
Hans Hüller.
Yes, first of all, it was for me a very strange experience to follow a person whom I knew by reading, by listening to him over a long time. And what could be detached from it, what could be taken from him, is the attitude, is the general attitude he developed through his life. He was a conservative in the very beginning. He changed his mind, and he had to change his mind during emigration. And then he was confronted with something even catastrophic when he returned. So this means that this man had to develop, or had to invent an attitude of his own, and without being biographically exact, it was the lesson this person gives through his life, and that was something that was astonishing for me to follow and to be directed into that way. How he managed to be polite, sober, not always very helpful, and yes, and then to follow his mission, to accomplish a mission which might look cruel, but he has no choice.
Thank you.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Pamela from Cinematography Brazil. My question is for Paweł. Grief is a strong and silent presence in Fatherland. What were your references in relation to it?
Could you repeat the first part of your question? Grief.
Yes, grief.
my relation to grief. I've known a bit of grief in my life, and and I could connect to the grief of this family. But also was grief dealt with in a very interesting way. Thomas Mann was not an expressive character, so he withheld a lot. It built in him. Even when you read his books, he never writes in a very immediate way about spontaneous things. There's always kind of beautifully phrased and very precisely, pedantically spelled out. So we kind of carried that into his performance, his being on screen. Erica is a fascinating character from, the way we kind of played her, from a Greek tragedy. She's got this visceral, symbiotic relationship with her brother, a brother who's now like an impossible character to save, really, and she's got the loyalty and love for her father. So it's like a good old-fashioned tragedy. Not that the film ends like a tragedy, but anyway. So yeah, it doesn't really answer your question, I know, but it's it's about all these emotions that are withheld. It wasn't a world where people talk about their emotions like today, where everything has a name, and trauma is the order of the day. So it was interesting. It was a very interesting to play with that dramatically, to have people who feel a lot but can't express a lot. I had all three characters are so rich, and all feel grief. Klaus feels grief because he's lost. Well, he's lost a world. He doesn't know where he belongs, which language to write in. He's got a father who's this kind of mountain of a figure, and a sister who's not there, and he goes under in a chaotic way. So all three have a situation of grief, and it's grief, family grief, but also grief for a world that's just disintegrated in front of them, and for not having a home, which is one of the main themes of the film.
Hi, my name is Lina Basi, Day Night TV Ukraine, and I would like to also ask the question, Paweł Pawlikowski. Thank you very much for your amazing film, which is full of symbols and feels like a warning, actually. And history moves in a spiral, right? And it seems like with every move, it's getting sharper. So. You lived deeply inside of the history, so I would like to ask you, what year do you believe we are in right now? 1936, 1943, 1949, which year?
I don't think it's a good question. There's certain analogies to different. This is pre-First World War, pre-Second World War, but nothing is ever like anything else. It's very specific, and with the new technologies and this kind of digital universe and this kind of brave new world we've entered, brave new world and barbarism at the same time. It's a really unholy mixture. It's an unprecedented situation. I am lost today. I have no idea which period we're in. That's why I make films set in the past. I can get a handle on them.
I'm asking you because...
Yeah. No, I can't help on that front.
Okay, thank you.
So...
Hello, this is Vicky from Way to Cinema, and thank you so much for this wonderful film. The first question's for the director, Paweł. I'm very interested in the use of music throughout the film, especially in the different chapters, the different cities, when it comes to the different characters as well. And it's very touching at the very end in the church where Bach played the organ as they first started. And I'm very interested how you will consider the use of music, and especially in your last film, like Cold War, there's also a lot of representation, Polish traditional dance and music, and especially very touched when Erica was at the window hearing the German soldiers singing that song, especially about Polish girls. And the second question is more to Sandra. So you grew up in Eastern Germany, and then especially in this journey, in this Reise, from Frankfurt to Eastern Germany, and then how did it impact you to portray Erica when she was also in between this kind of background that you grew up in personally yourself? Thank you.
Please, for the next each person, just one question.
So do you prefer Sandra or me? Well, music is really quick. I always like to have music in films. And it's already in the script very often, So like a script is always quite fluid. I try to keep it fluid, but the musical pieces are kind of quite central to this story.
Can you just add, because I think it's your third film that ends with a Bach music, or
it's a bit of a cop-out. Yeah, I know. Bach is a solution to all our problems. Yes, but here the Bach is actually played live, very badly on a ruined organ. So it's a slightly different. Previously, it was played by Richter or by Glenn Gould. So different. But here it was a dodgy Bach, but still worked. It worked. They still got moved.
Hello, Anna Tatarska from Dzień Dobry TV. Sorry, they said just one. Should I? I can wait.
Yeah.
Wait. The second question.
Sorry.
I don't really have an answer for you. Your own identity is always present when you work. For me, it is this way, and there were several connections in this film to some of us. Also, the fact that we shot all of it in Poland, most of it in Poland, was a very interesting experience in the face of the story and in the face of the time that we were portraying as well. So there were, it's like a network of of connections, but I don't want to go into specifics here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anna Tatarska from Dzień Dobry TV in Poland. First of all, I want to thank you for yesterday. I don't know how it happens, but it always magically happens that the most moving screening is Paweł Pawlikowski's screening 8 years ago and yesterday. So thank you so much for that. My question is about this universality of this film. It's obviously set in a very precise moment, talks about very precise characters, yet it felt so personal to me. So many questions I am asking myself today in the world we live in is in there. So many fears. And I sort of want to ask you, how does it happen? Because we interpret when we watch, but I think you plan. So how, when, what stage? Thank you.
It's not about planning, it's about finding story or possibility of a story which reflects where you are at the particular moment. I mean, one of the advantages of not making films too often is that I have a lot of time to live in between, and things happen in my life, in the world. And it's not a calculation. You just think, okay, I've got all these stories, but what is the story that is really like connecting with me now, and not intellectually, just like where I am. I mean, weirdly, although it's about the Mann family, it's my most personal film I've made, because I feel exactly what they're feeling, what he feels in the opening scene, the situation he is in, this situation where these narratives like thrown at you, and you know that reality is much more complicated, and nothing that people are saying actually reflects where you are or what the reality is, and this feeling of helplessness. I mean, I think definitely I have a personal connection to that, and I think possibly everyone else too, and the audience possibly as well. And then you try and make a film in a way that's not like not narcissistic, autobiographic, or anything. Just try to make it as universal as possible through strong images, strong scenes that don't explain but put you in that place, and leave you space to imagine. And that, when you do that, which is what cinema can do really well, it helps to make it universal. So some people will enter that space, others won't, but there's always hope that enough people will. And you try not to use arguments of today. You try to enter the logic of the time as far as possible. One of my things in life. I've lived in many countries and experienced, and for a long time. So I have a lot of perspectives on different things, and I know how everything can look differently depending who you are at which point in life, in which country you come from, which culture, which language you speak. So I try to make films that kind of convey that life is complicated, and there's no one narrative, and everyone is paradoxical in some way, and try and convey that in the simplest possible way, which cinema can do well, through images, scenes, sound, songs sometimes.
Hello. It's Yannis Raouzeos from Athens, Greece, myfilm.gr. I really enjoying all the time the minimalistic approach that Mr. Pawlikowski you have in all your films. That brings absolutely universality. This time, inside this minimalistic approach, I can sense in my question this mentality that is being given in a part of a film that speaks about the death cult that somehow exists inside German art and German character. And I would like, if it is possible, your group and you, speak about this challenge that somehow for all your characters in this film appears when this death cult comes forth, and how much these characters have to deal with it. Comes forth as a war, comes forth as a suicide, comes forth as something that even music has inside.
We get suicide in all my films, by the way, but I think the cult of death is actually mentioned in Thomas Mann's speech. It wasn't a speech he made in Frankfurt, but I kind of put that in. That Clemenceau said that German literature.
Microphone.
The German literature was, look at the Germans. They love death. Just look at their literature, right?
Save Goethe.
Apart from Goethe, so we tried to not pay homage to the death cult, but heroically show that life, love, which are schwesterlich verbunden, that in fact the whole film is about, to be or not to be, It starts with, possibly not to be, but then it's an attempt to, against all the odds, make sense of things. And Thomas Mann, channeling Goethe, is trying to defy the cult of death, but I think Hans will speak about it more elegantly.
Now, the effort he makes and why he accepts the prizes, the Goethe prizes, 2 Goethe prizes, he wrote about it years ago, even in 1943, and reflecting upon the possibility of delivering a sort of or overcoming devilish tendencies, which are even supposed by Goethe sometimes. And he uses that in order to give a lesson, a sermon even. It's 50-minute speech, imagine that. A very complicated speech, by the way, to teach his new and unknown audience what Goethe could deliver us. And this is a very huge effort, and he's not even really convinced that this might work, but he has to do it. He knows his obligations, and he feels in some respect he feels in the same track that Goethe has given to him before. So it was just a very ambivalent mission in some respect.
And there's this Mephistophelian dialectic, the dialectic that Tulpanov refers to, because Goethe and Mann says actually Mephistopheles is totally right. Nothing is worth anything. Nothingness is a fact. So and Faust's attempt is to prove that not. That human beings can pull themselves up by their own shoelaces, and this trip to Germany is a bit of an attempt to pull yourself up with your own shoelaces. A failed attempt, it has to be said.
Hello, Florencia Ángeles from Caracol Radio in Colombia. Question for Pavel. What historical elements did you use to recreate that post-war Germany, and at the same time, this beautiful story, which, in my opinion, you talk about exile, the need of transcendent and belonging. Thank you.
I didn't catch the first half. Sorry, could
Yes,
you repeat
the
that?
historical elements that you need for this story, that you.
And what about them?
What is the historical elements that you use in this for this movie?
On this film? Well, you know, it's the moment where, you know, at the height of the Cold War, two ideologies, one quite crude, the other one quite corrupt, fight for dominance, and Germany is divided symbolically and effectively. So it's a great historical context on many levels. And then if you manage to put a human story that brings all this to life, then you have a film that works on many levels. But is this the answer you wanted? Maybe you can, or somebody can answer. No?
May I add just a word? In 1949, it is not so easy to use the same language that the Nazis used. So the words are in somewhat désuète. They have no longer any value. And Thomas Mann explicitly refers to Fatherland as a whole. He says that my voyage is a sort of homage to the Fatherland as a whole, and he uses the same words that were used 4 or 5 years ago in a complete other direction, and this is something he really dares. So this is very interesting that he dares it, and he says they will not have lost their value. This is something he supposed that might be true, and he hoped it might come true.
Hi, it's Matt Donnelly from Variety. This is for Sandra. Congratulations on another kind of unforgettable performance. I think it's fair to say that your body of work is full of sort of artistic, independent-leaning dramas, but you're now on the other side of something like Project Hail Mary, which is at almost 700 million worldwide. So I'm just curious, will you come back for a sequel, and how do you feel artistically about big Hollywood sequels?
Wow, but this is the press conference for our film. I don't know.
For light relief, just say something.
I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I have fun with a lot of different things. And I feel very, very lucky that I can explore all these different ways of working. That's all. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interfere to ask a question to Lucas, who is here and who has remained silent so far. Thank you for your amazing work. How did you discuss with Paweł on this particular film? And can you tell us a little bit about your evolution of your relationship to him, because you've been with him since your start of the career?
Wow. Well, my evolution, so, we started, I started a bit by accident, because Vida, the original DP, he was sick, he quit, so then I was supposed to be camera operator, and then I became a DP, so we did Ida, and so how it started, and my life changed, my career also a lot, and I think also this kind of, now I can really say that I think working with Paweł kind of constitute my way of thinking about films and my way of working, and this really kind of, he's my teacher, my friend, and so this film, of course we did the Cold War, and but this film, how we were working, I feel we always worked the same way, and how it was evolving, so we just you want to ask something? No. So we just always start basically the same way. We just Paweł is writing a script, and we just going for a recce with our production designers, Kasia and Marcel, and we just going for 2 locations, and that's always a process of just going, talking, taking pictures, discussing those images, looking for images, and I think that's always the way that we are kind of just finding this film, and we always set up every frame together, so it's not like just I do image and Paweł do direction. It's just always do the same. Images are so important for Paweł, so basically the frame always is like we always set up the frame, and then we build this world. We're just finding those images, then from those images we're just building this world, very often static, the 4 panoramas in this film, because this world doesn't exist anymore, so we need to just really find those little excerpts of reality, then putting them together, and then we just building like kind of a painting, like a canvas, so always building in depth. With Paweł, who is working with first AD, and creating layers with people, and then we just basically making this, just creating this world, but Paweł is always making that, looking for some truth, some real life within this place, within this space.
And always in black and white, because we've been relieved that to find that you can also light a film in color.
Oh yeah,
but
still learning, but I'm making progress. Yeah,
but why the black and white? Was that decided?
Yeah, I think that was decided from the beginning. There was no doubt.
In all your films with him?
Yeah, but that was Paweł. Yeah. That's all. Yes, and that I think there was no question. Yeah, even there was no doubt, and because the world was kind of black and white, and also I think, I mean, there's even not this kind of a conversation.
We had once over Cold War, because it's so boring and black and white. Let's do something that's really saturated in a kind of Soviet cinema way, like Orvo color. But then I looked at it and I thought, guys, this looks really pretentious. This is black and white is an honest deal with the audience. This is a black and white world.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, we always try to tend towards abstraction in some way, in art generally. And black and white has that, it kind of removes the reality from the prose, or whatever the word is, and so it just feels right. I mean, we end up intellectualizing in these kind of meetings, why black and white, but actually it's just a kind of an instinctive decision which we then have to rationalize.
But also I think those images are like our inspiration. Remember those images like with Thomas Mann, some archives,
and out of car.
That was kind of like when he's just surrounded by people, a bit like a reportage, and not perfectly maybe composed, many layers, many people. He's just those images.
Do reportage without moving the camera much, because reportage is usually that. But how would you do it like a reportage, but have like a strong image at the same time? That was the kind of paradox we were working with, and it was just a kind of challenge. But it means a lot of work with extras, with stuff that happens in the shot.
Yeah, because I think that's so amazing with working with Paweł, that it's not only the main cast, main actors, but also you have just all those layers with people, and like you might have somebody who is not smoking properly, and then and we need to do another take. But because everything needs to kind of coincide in one go, but there's also need to be a bit of imperfection, a bit of kind of documentary feel, and I think, but it's always the process. We are always finding
squaring a circle.
Basically. Squaring the circle. But I think that's kind of amazing that we're just finding this film. And what was also amazing, what we did at the beginning, we went to Weimar together. And with my car, I was driving, just two of us. And then I realized, wow, I'm just driving Paweł, and he just really the situation what Thomas Mann was given by his daughter.
You're my daughter.
But I was just driving Paweł, and then it was just amazing just to go to Weimar just before the shooting, just to spend time
like the characters.
Just like the character, but also be there in Weimar and just find this ending.
Hi, my name is Christoph Balog and I am from Shepshiradi, Romania. I have a question to Sandra Hüller. So you previously mentioned that during this press conference that Erika Mann was like a world citizen and she spoke like a lot of languages. Well, you also happen to speak a lot of languages and you also acted in a lot of languages. And in the film, Erika clearly expresses her resentment towards post-war Germany multiple times. How does playing in German in a film that takes place in a post-war environment differ for you than, let's say, from a contemporary drama? Do you feel the guilt that is in the language?
I feel the guilt. I understand that question much better than the one you asked before. Yes, I feel the guilt every day. And also I never get bored of it, to feel the guilt, because it's necessary in order to act right. Yeah? Thank you.
Last questions, I'm afraid.
Hi there, it's Adam Plowright from AFP News Agency. Paweł, there's a lot of historical dramas in Cannes this year, set around the same sort of period as your film, and I was wondering if you were inviting us to sort of reflect in some way on our current day. One possible interpretation of, we see a Thomas Mann figure very much torn between two greater powers and trying to find his place in that. Is that in some way sort of representative of modern day Europe that we see in a similar situation?
Well, it's up to the audience to decide. But I don't think Thomas Mann is torn. He's keeping a steady course. He's not exactly torn. But yeah, I mean, interesting that there's more and more films set in historical times. Sometimes, as I said before, it's easier to talk about now, with a distance. I find a lot of historical films that I watch, I notice have a clear thesis, and they organize history according to the narrative that whoever is making the film is trying to sell us. And then very often the characters in these films illustrate something or explain something. And I try to do the opposite. I try to I just try to show how complicated it all is, which I think is a very healthy thing to tell people today, that it's all complicated. If you know absolutely that your narrative is right,
you mean that
it's dangerous.
Everything is not, in fact, black and white?
No.
You're putting it so banal. It was much more profound. But yeah, but the history is complicated, It's like,